It was one of those bitterly cold mornings where the sky hangs low and gray, like it's too tired to shine. Wind blew through the bus stop like it had a personal vendetta against anyone standing there. Amanda tightened the thin jacket around her and wrapped her arms around her little boy, Jaden, who nestled into her side with his backpack slung over both shoulders. She kissed the top of his head and whispered, "Just a little longer, baby." The bus was late again, typical. She glanced at her phone. Already 7:42 a.m., and her shift started at 8 o'clock sharp. No bus, no ride, and no backup plan. She looked around, unsure of what to do. This was the third time this month. If she was late again, there was a good chance her manager would finally let her go. Amanda had been juggling 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and the rent from piling up. Most nights, she skipped meals to make sure Jaden had enough. She didn't complain, though. She couldn't afford to. The city had a cruel way of reminding you how invisible you were when you had nothing. People walked past her like she didn't exist, eyes forward, earbuds in, no time for someone like her. But Amanda wasn't asking for much. Just one thing that would go right, just one small break in a week full of chaos. Then, through the blur of rushing cars and cold air, a sleek black SUV slowed to a stop near the curb. She didn't think anything of it at first, probably just someone checking their GPS or waiting for someone to come out of the nearby coffee shop. But the window rolled down. A man leaned over from the driver's seat. "Excuse me," he said, voice calm and clear, "are you okay?" Amanda blinked. She hesitated. A part of her wanted to ignore him, to just look the other way. These days, trust didn't come easy. But another part, the desperate part, pushed her forward. "I'm just trying to get my son to school and make it to work," she said honestly. "The bus hasn't come." The man nodded slowly. He had a trimmed beard, kind eyes, and wore a crisp navy coat that looked like it cost more than her rent. "Hop in," he said without missing a beat. "I can take you both." Amanda froze. It was everything every warning sign told her not to do, get into a stranger's car. But the clock was ticking, and Jaden tugged on her sleeve, eyes full of worry. She looked at the man again. Something about him didn't feel threatening. His car smelled like leather and fresh pine. She made the choice. The man introduced himself as Daniel. Just Daniel. Nothing flashy, no titles, no business talk. Just a guy who said he'd been heading to a meeting nearby and saw her standing alone with her son. "You looked like you needed a break," he said casually. Amanda gave him a tight smile, trying to be polite but guarded. "Well, I appreciate it. It's hard when you don't have a car and the city doesn't exactly work for people like me." Daniel chuckled softly, not in a mocking way but like he understood more than he let on. "You'd be surprised how many people are just one step away from needing help," he replied. They drove Jaden to school first. The boy looked up at Daniel and shyly thanked him before running off toward the building. Amanda watched him go with pride in her eyes. "He's a good kid," she said softly. "Smart, too. I just hope I can give him something better someday." Daniel glanced at her, something shifting in his expression. He didn't say anything right away, just turned the corner and started driving toward the direction Amanda had mentioned for her job. The silence in the car wasn't awkward, it was thoughtful, like something unsaid was floating in the air between them. As they neared her workplace, Amanda gave directions to the back alley entrance where employees usually slipped in. "This is fine," she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. "Thanks again." "Really?" Daniel didn't move. He studied her for a second longer. "Wait," he said. "Can I ask what you do?" Amanda laughed, not unkindly. "I clean offices. Empty trash bins, mop floors. Nothing glamorous, but it pays some of the bills." Daniel leaned back in his seat, thinking. And if you had the chance to do something different, what would it be? Amanda looked at him, caught off guard. Different? I don't know. I used to want to study nursing. But dreams like that, they cost money and time, and I have neither. She stepped out of the car, still unsure what to make of him. Daniel rolled the window down further. "Amanda," he said, calling her by name for the first time. "I hope we meet again." She nodded, then watched the car disappear into traffic like it had never been there. She walked into her shift with a strange feeling lingering in her chest. It wasn't love or hope exactly, it was something else. Like the world had noticed her, just for a moment. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, was that Daniel wasn't just any man in a luxury SUV. He was Daniel Harper, the founder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. A man whose net worth could fill 10 lifetimes, yet who still remembered what it felt like to have nothing. Later that evening, as Amanda was closing up the office, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Would you be open to meeting for coffee tomorrow? I have an idea I think you'll want to hear. Daniel." Her hands trembled as she read it. Her first instinct was fear. Why would someone like him want anything to do with her? But underneath that fear was a spark of curiosity. Because maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a fluke. Maybe this stranger wasn't finished changing her life yet. And what Daniel had in mind was something Amanda could never have imagined in her wildest dreams. Would she accept the invitation? Would this struggling single mother dare to believe that her life could actually turn around? Or was it all too good to be true? Amanda stared at the text on her cracked phone screen long after her shift ended. Her fingers hovered above the screen, unsure of what to say. A part of her thought it was a mistake. Maybe he meant to text someone else. Or maybe it was a cruel prank, people had done worse for laughs. But his name was there. Daniel. No last name, no fancy title. Just like before. Simple, direct. She didn't reply right away. Instead, she walked home in the dim light of early evening, carrying the weight of exhaustion on her shoulders. The streets buzzed with the usual noise, sirens in the distance, horns blaring, conversations happening on stoops and sidewalks. Amanda moved through it all like a ghost. Her mind kept drifting back to that SUV, to that voice, and that question: if you had the chance to do something different, what would it be? At home, she found Jaden on the floor with a coloring book, crayons spread out like a rainbow explosion. He looked up and smiled, that smile that made everything else in the world fade. "Mom, can I show you my drawing?" "Of course, baby," she said, dropping her bag near the couch. He held up a picture of a tall building with stick figures on top. "That's you. And me. And we're on top of the world." Amanda choked up for a second but forced a smile. "I love it." Later that night, after Jaden was asleep, curled up in the blanket they shared, Amanda picked up her phone again. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard before she finally typed, "Okay." "What time?" The reply came instantly, as if he'd been waiting. 10 a.m. at Montrose Cafe. "I'll reserve a table." She barely slept that night. Her mind ran wild with possibilities and doubts. What did he want? Why her? The whole thing felt surreal. And yet, something about it felt safe. Not easy, but safe. The next morning, Amanda stood in front of her tiny mirror, trying to make her only decent blouse look clean and ironed. It was faded at the sleeves and missing a button at the top, but it would have to do. She didn't have the luxury of a wardrobe. Every dollar went to rent, food, or Jaden's school supplies. Montrose Cafe wasn't far, but it was a place she had only ever passed by. The kind of spot where people wore business suits and ordered things like oat milk lattes. Amanda had always felt like an outsider just walking by. Today, she walked in. The warmth hit her first, quiet music playing, the scent of fresh coffee and pastries in the air. People talked in low tones, sipping from ceramic cups. And there, in a corner booth near the window, was Daniel. Same navy coat. Same calm smile. He stood when he saw her. "Amanda," he said warmly, motioning to the seat across from him. "I'm glad you came." She sat down, trying to ignore the way other people glanced at her. Her clothes didn't fit in here, and she felt it deep in her bones. "I almost didn't," she admitted. "I know. That's why I appreciate it," he said, sliding a menu toward her. "Order anything you like." She looked at the menu, all unfamiliar words and prices that made her throat tighten. "Just a coffee. Cream and sugar." Daniel nodded, signaling the waitress. Once the drinks arrived, he folded his hands in front of him. "I meant what I said yesterday. You struck me as someone who's trying hard, and deserves a break." Amanda raised an eyebrow. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," he replied, not missing a beat. "You didn't ask for anything. You didn't complain. You were focused on getting your son where he needed to be and getting to work. That says more than you think." She sipped her coffee, unsure how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to her before. Most people looked right past her. Daniel leaned back, his voice lower now. "There's something I'd like to offer you. But I need to ask one thing first. Are you willing to take a risk?" Amanda frowned slightly. "What kind of risk?" "A life-changing one," he said, his tone serious. "I want to give you an opportunity. A job. Not just any job, but something you can grow into. Something stable, with benefits. A place where you can build a future." Amanda's heart skipped. "Why me? There are hundreds of people out there who'd jump at that. People with degrees. Resumes." Daniel smiled. "Because I trust my instincts. And because I believe the best people aren't always the ones with the perfect paper trails. They're the ones who show up every day, no matter what." "That's you." Her mind spun. It all sounded too good. Too impossible. "What's the catch?" she asked quietly. "No catch," Daniel said. "Just a real chance. I'll be honest, though, it won't be easy. You'll have to learn fast. Work hard. But you won't be alone. I'll make sure of that." Amanda sat back, hands trembling slightly. She didn't know what scared her more, staying in the same place or stepping into something unknown. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course," he said. "Take your time. Just know, the door's open." They talked a little more, about Jaden, about where Amanda grew up, about the times life had felt unfair but she'd kept going anyway. Daniel didn't ask for pity or try to play the hero. He just listened. And Amanda found herself opening up more than she expected. Before she left, he handed her a business card. Plain white, with his name and number embossed. "Call me when you're ready." Amanda walked out into the morning sun, blinking as if the whole thing had been a dream. She clutched the card like it was made of gold. But something inside her shifted. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. That night, she sat on the couch after putting Jaden to bed. She stared at the card. Still unsure. Still scared. But also, curious. Then, as if the universe wanted to keep her guessing, there was a knock at the door. A soft, hesitant knock. Amanda opened it slowly, heart thudding. A man stood there. Not Daniel. Someone else. He wore a suit and held a sealed envelope. "Miss Amanda Cole?" he asked. "Yes?" "This is for you," he said, handing over the envelope. Then, without another word, he turned and left. Amanda closed the door and stared at the envelope. Her name was handwritten on the front. She opened it slowly. Inside was a note, no signature, just words in careful script. "You helped me once without even knowing. Now it's my turn. Don't be afraid of change. It's already waiting for you." Below it was a check. Her breath caught in her throat. And that was just the beginning. Because Amanda was about to discover that Daniel had more than a job in mind. Much more. But not everyone watching her rise was cheering. In the shadows, someone else had noticed too. And they weren't happy. Not at all. Amanda stared at the check for what felt like hours, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. The amount written on it wasn't just generous, it was life-changing. Enough to pay off months of back rent, clear out her overdue bills, and still have money left over. It didn't make sense. No one gave money like this, especially not to someone like her. She turned the note over, hoping for some sort of clue, but there was nothing else. Just those words, "You helped me once without even knowing. Now it's my turn." But what had she done? That night, sleep wouldn't come. Her thoughts kept circling back to Daniel. He'd been kind, yes, but quiet, careful. He hadn't said much about himself, and the more Amanda thought about it, the more questions piled up. Why her? Why now? And who was the man who brought the envelope? He didn't say where he came from, didn't wait for a reaction, just handed it over and vanished. The next morning, Amanda called Daniel. She wasn't even sure what she wanted to say, but the moment his voice answered, her guard started to fall. "I got something," she said, keeping her voice low so Jaden wouldn't hear from the other room. "An envelope. With a check. From someone who said I helped them once. Did you send that?" There was a long pause on the line. Then Daniel said, "No. But I have a feeling I know who did." Amanda's pulse quickened. "Who?" "I'll explain," he said. "But not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight?" Amanda agreed. The mystery had hooked her now, and a strange part of her, one that had been buried beneath years of hardship, felt curious. Almost alive. That evening, she left Jaden with a neighbor and took the train to a quiet part of the city she didn't know well. Daniel met her outside a building that didn't look like anything special, just glass and steel, like most places downtown. But when they stepped inside, it was a different world. Modern art on the walls, polished floors, soft lighting. And behind the reception desk, a sleek logo, Harper Tech. Amanda stopped in her tracks. "Harper," she said slowly. "That's your last name?" Daniel smiled softly. "It is. You're that Harper? The tech guy? I saw your name on the news during that education grant thing last year." "I don't talk about it much," he said. "Not unless I have a reason to." Amanda followed him to a private meeting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He poured them both water and sat across from her. "I didn't lie to you, Amanda. I just didn't want you to think I was trying to impress you with money. I've seen how people change when they know who I am." "I get that," Amanda said quietly. "But this check, if it wasn't from you, who was it from?" Daniel hesitated, then leaned forward. "Years ago, when I was just starting out, dead broke, couch surfing, trying to build a company from nothing, I used to work at a local diner. One night, I was hungry, no money in my pocket. I sat outside hoping someone would share a meal or at least give me a few bucks. A waitress came out, gave me a free sandwich, and told me, 'Don't give up. The world doesn't always stay this hard.' That waitress was your mom." Amanda's eyes widened. Her heart skipped. "My mom?" "I didn't know it at the time," Daniel continued. "I didn't even catch her name back then. But last night, I did some digging. I remembered her face. Found an old staff photo online. She's the reason I got through that night. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I'd pay it forward." Amanda sat in stunned silence. Her mother had passed away years ago, after a long battle with cancer. Amanda had watched her work herself to the bone for their small apartment and a better life she never got to live. And now, somehow, her kindness had come back around. "But why didn't you just say that before?" Amanda asked softly. "Because I needed to know who you were," Daniel said. "Not just her daughter. And now I do." Amanda didn't know what to say. Emotions crashed over her like waves: grief, gratitude, fear, and something else, the weight of a new path opening in front of her. But as her world slowly began to change, other eyes were watching. Across the city, in a modest but well-kept office, a woman named Carla sat in front of a laptop screen, scrolling through surveillance photos. She was sharp, in her 40s, with neatly combed hair and a calm that didn't match the tension in her eyes. She was Daniel's former executive assistant. Fired 2 months earlier when internal audits uncovered misused funds under her watch. She had always believed Daniel would forgive her. That he'd sweep it under the rug. Instead, he'd cut ties cleanly, and quietly ensured she'd never work in tech again. Now she watched Amanda's photo on the screen, captured from the coffee shop, then later walking into Harper Tech. Her eyes narrowed. "Interesting," she muttered. Next to her sat a man in a cheap suit, his expression unreadable. "You sure this is your angle?" "She's the weak link," Carla said. "He's trusting her with something. And that gives us a way back in." The man nodded. "You want me to dig?" Carla smiled coldly. "Dig deep. Everyone's got something to hide." Back in Amanda's world, she had no idea that her name was now in someone else's mouth. That her face had been added to a file. All she knew was that life had shifted. Opportunities had begun appearing, small ones, but real. A temporary role in Harper Tech's community outreach team. A weekly stipend to support her and Jaden while she trained. Access to online courses. A mentor. But with every new step forward, Amanda couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching her. One night, she noticed a black car parked across from her apartment building. No movement, just sitting there with lights off. The next morning, it was gone. Then, an envelope under her door, no return address, no name. Inside, a single photo, her and Daniel at the cafe, mid-conversation. A chill crept down her spine. She showed it to Daniel that afternoon. He went silent for a long time, jaw tight. "I think I know who's behind this," he said. "Is this someone dangerous?" Amanda asked. "Someone I thought I left behind," he said. "But now they're pulling you in." Amanda looked at him, fear flickering behind her eyes. "What do we do?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He just looked out the window, deep in thought. Because now it wasn't just about helping her. It was about protecting her. And he knew, it was only a matter of time before the past tried to destroy the future they were just starting to build. Amanda tried to act normal in the days that followed, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every time she walked Jaden to school or showed up for her training shift at Harper Tech, her eyes scanned the street. She couldn't shake the image of that black car or the photo that had no business being in her home. Something was coming. She could feel it. And whatever it wasn't just watching, it was waiting. Daniel had become more cautious, too. He moved meetings around, started using encrypted communication, and assigned a quiet but clearly trained driver to Amanda. He didn't explain much, but his silence told her everything. He was worried. And not just about his company, he was worried about her. About Jaden. About what was coming for them all. One evening, Amanda walked into her apartment and found the door slightly ajar. Her stomach dropped. She backed away instantly and called Daniel. Before he could answer, a man stepped into the hallway behind her. Tall. Sunglasses. Earbud in his right ear. He didn't say a word. Just nodded, calmly stepped past her, and entered the apartment with swift, trained movements. Moments later, he came out. Clear. But they were here, he said to Daniel, who had now pulled up in a black SUV. Amanda stood frozen. "What do you mean they?" Daniel glanced at the man, then at her. "Whoever left that photo, came back." The next day, the tension grew worse. Amanda showed up to Harper Tech and found the main doors blocked by media vans. Someone had leaked a rumor that Daniel Harper was being investigated again for financial misconduct. News crews lined the sidewalk, shouting questions. Amanda ducked her head and slipped inside through the service entrance. Her hands shook as she scanned her badge and stepped into the elevator. Inside, the office buzzed with fear and rumors. Some employees whispered about another scandal. Others asked about the new girl, Amanda. A few even suggested she had something to do with it. She found Daniel in a meeting room, staring at a large screen covered in data and internal reports. His jaw was clenched, his sleeves rolled up. "They're trying to take the whole company down," he said without looking up. "Who?" Amanda asked. "Carla," he said. "And she's not working alone. She's got help, someone who knows our system, our people, our history. They're feeding lies to the press, manipulating documents, creating chaos." Amanda felt the ground shifting under her. "Because of me?" "No," Daniel said firmly. "Because of me." But they're using you to get to me. That night, Amanda went home early and sat on the edge of her bed while Jaden colored in the living room. The walls felt thinner. The silence outside too loud. Her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to pick up. The voice on the other end was familiar. Cold. Calm. Enjoying your new life, Amanda? She froze. Who is this? I'm someone who remembers when people like you knew their place, the voice said. But don't worry. You'll be out of his world soon. Just walk away. Take your kid and disappear. Or this ends badly for both of you. The line went dead. Amanda stared at her reflection in the darkened TV screen. Her face was pale, eyes wide. For a moment, she considered doing exactly what the voice said, walking away. Taking Jaden and leaving the city, starting over in some small town where no one knew her name. But then she remembered her mother's words. The world doesn't always stay this hard. And Daniel's. I believe in you. The next morning, Amanda walked straight into Daniel's office. They called me, she said. Daniel looked up, his expression hardening. What did they say? That I should disappear. That I don't belong in your world. Daniel stood, paced for a moment, then finally looked at her. You don't need to prove anything, Amanda. You're not part of this fight. Yes, I am, she said. You gave me a shot when no one else would. You protected me when I didn't even know I needed protection. I'm not leaving just because someone's scared of what I might become. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. We're going to fight this. But we have to be smart. Carla's using your past, your struggles, as proof you're not worthy. She's feeding that story to everyone. Reporters. Investors. Board members. And it's working. Amanda swallowed hard. Then we show them who I am. They worked late into the night, gathering everything, emails, receipts, security footage, witness statements. Amanda gave them permission to run a background check on her, to lay everything bare. The goal wasn't to hide anything. It was to show the truth, that she'd struggled, yes, but she hadn't broken. That she was exactly the kind of person who deserved a second chance. But time was running out. Daniel had just 2 days until the emergency board meeting, where Carla would present her evidence, and where the board could vote to remove him as CEO. If she succeeded, Amanda would be out. Everything they'd built would vanish. On the eve of the meeting, Amanda received another envelope at her door. This time, there was no photo. Just a single line typed in bold. You've got one more night to walk away. Last warning. Amanda crumpled it and threw it into the trash. Across the city, Carla sat in a high-rise hotel room, watching a live feed on her laptop, security footage from Harper Tech's lobby. She zoomed in on Amanda entering the building that morning, clutching her ID badge, walking past people who still whispered behind her back. She doesn't scare easy, said the man next to her, flipping through a dossier. She will, Carla said. Or she'll break. But Carla underestimated something. Amanda wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for her son. For her future. For the promise that people like her, single mothers, survivors, the overlooked, deserved more than just survival. They deserved a seat at the table. And when the board meeting finally arrived, Amanda wasn't hiding. She was ready to speak. But the real storm hadn't hit yet. And what Amanda didn't know was that Carla had saved her most dangerous move for last. One that could not only destroy Amanda's chance at a new life, but uncover a secret from Amanda's past that even she had tried to forget. Amanda sat in the lobby of Harper Tech the morning of the board meeting, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. Her palms were sweaty, her mind racing through everything that had led to this moment. She was going to speak, not just to defend Daniel, but to defend herself. To prove that her past didn't define her future. She didn't feel ready, but she also knew she couldn't back down. Not now. She hadn't told Daniel about the second note. Something about it felt different. Like it was meant to scare her into silence just before the moment of truth. And that was exactly why she refused to be silent. For the first time in her life, she felt like her voice might actually matter. But just as she stood to head toward the executive floor, her phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. No words, just a video file. She hesitated, then tapped it open. The video was grainy, like old surveillance footage. But what she saw nearly made her legs give out. It was her. 5 years ago. Standing behind a counter at the pharmacy she used to work in. A man approached, red hoodie, angry eyes. He shouted something off camera. Amanda grabbed something from under the counter, then the video cut off just as the man lunged forward. Her throat went dry. She remembered that night. The robbery. The panic. The fear. But she had never told anyone that in the chaos, she had swung a heavy flashlight and hit the man square in the head before fleeing out the back door. She was never charged. The police never followed up. The robber had lived and eventually been arrested for another crime, and she'd buried the memory deep, trying to move on. Now someone had dug it up. She called Daniel immediately. When she arrived in his office, he was already on the phone with his legal team, shouting orders and reviewing documents. Amanda placed the phone down on the table and pressed play again. Daniel watched without a word. When it ended, he looked up at her with concern. "Where did this come from?" "My phone. Just now." "Carla," he muttered, his expression dark. "She must have found someone with access to old police footage. If this leaks..." Amanda nodded slowly. "They'll say I'm violent. Unstable. They'll say you took in someone dangerous." Daniel paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "This isn't just about discrediting you anymore. They're trying to burn the whole house down." As if on cue, Daniel's assistant entered the room, pale-faced and breathless. "Sir, there's a reporter downstairs. She says she has documents linking Amanda to a sealed police file from 5 years ago. She's threatening to go live in 20 minutes. Amanda froze. Daniel turned to her. "Do you want to tell your story? On your terms? Or let them twist it?" Amanda didn't hesitate. "I'll speak." 10 minutes later, Amanda stood in front of a podium set up in a small conference room, cameras trained on her, reporters packed wall to wall. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or makeup. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice didn't crack. She told them everything. About the night at the pharmacy. About how scared she was. About how she'd only wanted to get home to her son. "I didn't ask to be a hero," she said quietly. "And I didn't mean to hurt anyone. But I was alone, working a double shift, and someone came in with rage in his eyes and threatened my life. I did what I thought I had to do. And I've carried that with me every day since." The room was silent. Even the camera flashes seemed to pause. "I'm not perfect," she added, voice soft but steady. "But I work hard. I care about people. And I believe everyone deserves a second chance. Including me." She stepped down from the podium and walked straight to the elevator, heart pounding in her ears. She didn't know what kind of storm would come from what she'd just done. But she knew one thing: she had faced it head-on. Upstairs, Daniel was still fighting his own battle. In the boardroom, Carla had arrived early and handed out folders full of carefully doctored documents, implying fraud, bias, and personal misconduct. She had manipulated timelines and twisted facts, and now she stood at the head of the table with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. Then Amanda walked in. She entered the room like she belonged there. And for a moment, Carla's expression faltered. Amanda didn't sit. She placed her own folder on the table and looked each board member in the eye. Then she spoke. She told them about the video. About the threat. About how Carla had used her past as a weapon. But then she flipped the script. "What kind of company are we building," she asked, "if we punish people for surviving?" The room went quiet again. Even the board members who had seemed swayed by Carla earlier were now shifting in their seats. Daniel stood beside her. "This is exactly why I started Harper Tech, to find the people the world overlooks, and give them the tools to change everything. If Amanda doesn't belong here, then maybe I don't either." Carla stepped forward, trying to recover. "This isn't about her past. It's about transparency. Leadership. Risk." Amanda looked at her. "You want to talk about risk? How about the risk of hiring someone who nearly lost everything and gave her last $5 to feed her son, who then got up the next day and went back to work anyway? That's the kind of risk you're afraid of. Because it reminds you that your power isn't earned. It's inherited. Protected. Shielded by people like me not being in the room." The board fell silent. Carla's mask was cracking. But just as the tide seemed to be turning, a man stepped into the room, a courier, holding a single manila envelope. He handed it to a board member and left without a word. Inside was one final piece of evidence. A signed affidavit. From the man Amanda had defended herself against in the pharmacy 5 years ago. He claimed Amanda had attacked him unprovoked. That she had snapped under pressure and overreacted. That she was unstable, dangerous, and should never have been trusted inside a corporate building. Amanda's knees nearly gave out. Carla smiled. But Daniel took the envelope, read it carefully, then pulled out his phone. "Run it," he said to his assistant. "We need to verify this man's current location." The assistant typed furiously, then paused. "Sir, the man who signed this affidavit? He's been in federal custody for the last 6 months." Daniel looked up slowly. Which meant someone had forged the statement. And now, the stakes weren't just about reputation or money anymore. Now it was fraud. Now it was criminal. Now it was war. Daniel stood frozen with the forged affidavit in his hand, the boardroom tense and silent around him. Amanda's breath caught in her throat as everyone's eyes shifted between the document and Carla, whose confident smile had started to wither. The moment felt stretched, like the air itself was holding still, waiting for someone to say what they all knew. "This document," Daniel said, holding it up, "was signed by a man who's been in federal custody for the last 6 months. Which means one of two things happened here: either this is a miracle, or someone in this room is lying." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the boardroom. Carla took a step back, her face paling. "This is ridiculous. I received that affidavit from a private investigator." "Whose name you conveniently won't provide," Daniel cut in. You've been feeding this board lies, manipulating their trust. And you didn't just try to smear Amanda. You tried to sabotage this company. Amanda felt something shift in the room. The board members who had looked unsure before now sat straighter, glancing at each other, piecing things together. Carla opened her mouth to speak, but one of them, a sharp-eyed woman in a navy suit, cut her off. "We need to vote," she said calmly. "Right now." Carla's voice wavered for the first time. "You can't seriously believe I..." But it was too late. Hands were raised one by one around the table. The votes came in fast. The final tally wasn't even close. Carla was removed immediately from the board. An internal investigation was ordered. And Amanda? Amanda stood in stunned silence as Daniel turned to her, his expression softening. "You did this," he said. "You stood up for yourself, and for what's right." Amanda couldn't speak. The emotions caught in her chest like a wave that refused to break. She hadn't just survived the storm, she'd stood in the middle of it and refused to run. The board meeting ended in a blur. Reporters scrambled for statements, cameras clicked, and security escorted Carla out of the building. Daniel placed a hand gently on Amanda's shoulder as they stepped into the elevator. "You still okay?" he asked quietly. "I think so," she whispered. Can't believe it's over." But it wasn't quite over. That night, Amanda returned home to find Jaden asleep on the couch, his favorite blanket tucked around him, cartoons still playing softly on the TV. She smiled and turned off the screen, then noticed something strange: her door wasn't fully locked. Her heart pounded. She stepped slowly inside and scanned the room. Nothing was out of place, except for one envelope sitting on the kitchen table. She opened it cautiously. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten in messy ink. "You're not the only one with a past. He's not who you think he is." Amanda froze. No signature. No address. Just that cryptic message. And taped to the bottom of the page, an old photograph. It was Daniel. Maybe 10, 12 years younger. He was standing outside a courthouse. His hair was shorter, his jaw more angular, but there was no mistaking him. In the background was a woman, tall, wearing a coat and sunglasses, her arm around a boy who looked a lot like Jaden. Amanda's knees went weak. Her breath caught. Was it just a trick? Another attempt to confuse her? Or had she just stumbled into something bigger? She stared at the photo, heart thudding louder than before. She couldn't make sense of it. But one thing was clear. This wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning of something she never saw coming. Amanda stared at the photograph in her trembling hands, her heart racing as she turned it over, hoping for some kind of explanation. But the back was blank. Just like the note, mysterious, vague, and intentionally unsettling. She looked at the woman in the picture again. The angle was strange, and her face was half hidden behind her sunglasses. But the child beside her, there was something oddly familiar in his face. Not just to Daniel, but to Jaden. Amanda sat down, her thoughts swirling like a storm. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of revelations, danger, and unexpected truths. But this felt like something buried deeper. Something Daniel hadn't told her. The next morning, Amanda met Daniel at the office. She didn't wave the photo in his face or storm in with accusations. She simply placed it on his desk and sat down across from him. Daniel stared at the image, his shoulders stiffening. For a long time, he said nothing. "That's my mother," he said quietly, finally. "And my half-brother." Amanda blinked. "You're, what?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, his face unusually still. "My father had an affair years ago. The woman in the photo was the other woman. She had a son, his name was Marcus. My father never acknowledged him publicly. My family kept it quiet. We weren't allowed to talk about it." Amanda nodded slowly, piecing things together. "When I started Harper Tech," Daniel continued, "I tried to do things differently. I wanted to build something based on merit, not bloodlines or secrets. But someone's been trying to punish me for that. Someone who didn't like that I chose people like you, people with grit and heart, instead of handing out opportunities to those born with them." Amanda looked at him carefully. "You think your half-brother is behind all this?" Daniel exhaled. "I don't know. I haven't seen him in over 10 years. But I wouldn't be surprised. My family's lawyers paid them off, kept them quiet. Maybe Marcus never forgot." The pieces fell into place: Carla's aggressive campaign, the forged affidavit, the threat note. If Marcus was behind it, then he hadn't just come for Daniel's company, he'd come for Daniel's principles. Amanda left the office that day with a strange mix of clarity and unease. The battle they'd fought wasn't just corporate sabotage. It was personal history leaking into the present, with more layers than she'd imagined. But for now, it was over. Harper Tech had stood its ground. Daniel had chosen integrity over silence. And Amanda had found her voice. A week later, Daniel hosted a press conference to clear the air once and for all. He publicly condemned the forged affidavit and confirmed that the board had launched a full investigation into Carla's misconduct. He didn't name Marcus. He didn't need to. The statement was clear: truth mattered more than legacy. Amanda stood in the back of the crowd, watching the man who had once been a stranger offering her a ride. He didn't look like a millionaire CEO in that moment. He looked like someone trying to make things right. After the conference, Daniel approached her quietly. "How's Jaden?" Amanda smiled. "He's good. He got invited to speak at his school's science fair next week. He's been practicing his speech every night." Daniel grinned. "Smart kid. Takes after his mom." She looked at him, her expression soft. "You really didn't know who I was that day in the parking lot?" Daniel shook his head. "All I saw was a tired mother trying to get home to her son. I didn't need to know anything else." Amanda felt a knot in her chest loosen just a little. Life had thrown her into chaos, but somehow, it had also led her to people who saw beyond her circumstances. As the weeks passed, Amanda's life began to change in quiet, meaningful ways. She was officially offered a full-time position at Harper Tech, not out of pity, but because she'd earned it. Her ideas during product reviews had impressed the team. Her honesty in the boardroom had earned their respect. Jaden started tutoring kids in his school who struggled with math. He told Amanda one night, "If someone like me can get help from someone like you, maybe I can help someone else too." One afternoon, Amanda visited her old neighborhood. The diner she used to work in still had the flickering sign above the entrance. She walked in, and the waitress behind the counter froze. "Is that you, Amanda?" She smiled. "Yeah. Just wanted to say hi." They chatted for a few minutes, catching up. Amanda slipped an envelope onto the counter before she left. It wasn't much, just a donation to the staff fund and a thank you note, but it was her way of closing a chapter. That night, back home, Amanda tucked Jaden into bed and looked out the window. The city lights glowed softly in the distance. Her past hadn't vanished, but it no longer controlled her. And somewhere out there, maybe Marcus still lurked. Maybe he still watched. But Amanda wasn't afraid anymore. Because no secret was stronger than truth, and no lie could outlast someone who refused to stay silent. The journey had started with a simple question: "Can you give me a ride?" And ended with Amanda discovering her strength, her voice, and her purpose. She wasn't just a struggling single mother anymore. She was a fighter, a survivor, and someone who would never again let fear drive her off course. As she turned off the lights and headed to bed, Amanda whispered one last thing into the night. "Thank you, stranger. You changed everything."